Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a truly fascinating text called 8 Secrets on Life and Samsara by Xu Feng. Think of what we're doing today as exploring a literal operating system for the universe. Now, we're not here to debate its ultimate truth or its theological validity. Instead, we're just going to look closely at this incredibly detailed, highly structured framework it presents. It reads kind of like a cosmic rulebook, laying out the exact mechanics of reincarnation, how souls are distributed, and the universal laws that govern life and death. If you appreciate complex systems and want to understand how a completely different paradigm views the whole architecture of existence, you're going to find this explainer incredibly engaging.
Okay, let's dive into this and give you a roadmap of how we're going to break down this cosmic rulebook, going all the way from macro mathematics to the actual mechanics of death. First up, the fixed cosmic cycle. Second, the pyramid of souls. Third, the gravity of reincarnation. Fourth, death and genetic imprints. And finally, the mercy of forgetting. Section 1. The fixed cosmic cycle. So the foundational rule of this universe is that the absolute total number of lives is completely fixed. It literally never varies. It doesn't grow, it doesn't shrink. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Just think of it like the traditional water cycle. You know, when a bowl of water evaporates in the hot sun, the water hasn't died, right? It's simply changed form into clouds, or rain, or eventually icebergs. The total volume of water on Earth remains exactly constant. Well, the author applies this exact same logic to lives. When the human population increases, new lives aren't just being magically generated out of thin air. They're simply reincarnating from other spaces, maybe the animal kingdom, the plant layer, hell, or heaven, and moving on to Earth. It's a closed-loop system of constant recycling, without ever actually changing the total quantity.
Section 2. The Pyramid of Souls. If the total number of lives is fixed, how on earth are they distributed? The foundational rule here is that the lower the level of life, the vastly greater its quantity. This framework actually mirrors structures we already see everywhere around us. In nature, insects vastly outnumber birds, which outnumber herbivores, which in turn outnumber carnivores. In human society, everyday workers outnumber managers, who outnumber mayors and presidents. By applying this universally, the text makes a really striking deduction. To prevent cosmic chaos, quote-unquote bad people or ignorant people must inherently outnumber good people or sages. The universe literally relies on this pyramid shape to maintain order. Now, what's really interesting here is a massive number that seems like a contradiction: 30 billion. The text states there are 30 billion super-celestial beings in higher realms, compared to only about 7 billion humans on Earth. Doesn't that totally break the rule that lower levels have higher quantities? Well, the author resolves this by distinguishing between static and dynamic time. You see, those 30 billion celestials represent a static number over hundreds of millions of years. But dynamically, over that exact same massive time span, trillions of humans have lived and died. So over time, the lower realm still vastly, vastly outnumbers the higher one. To drive this point home, the author brings in a famous quote from Jesus Christ. In this framework, souls are valued by scarcity. The masses inherently represent high quantity and lower quality. Therefore, if you're simply following what the majority of people are doing, prioritizing the exact same worldly things the masses prioritize, the text argues you're automatically aligning yourself with a downward trajectory. Section 3. The Gravity of Reincarnation. So we've looked at the math, now let's look at the physics. Why is it so much easier for a soul to fall downward than to sublimate upward? Well, the universe has a very distinct gravitational pull. The author explains that it's vastly easier to appease our physical flesh than to do the incredibly hard work of sublimating the soul. Ordinary people have inertia. They naturally cater to mass values, they cling comfortably to tradition, and they're pretty unwilling to accept new, paradigm-shifting ideas. Doing what everyone else does, making money, following the standard life scripts, is simply the path of least resistance. You're essentially just giving in to cosmic gravity. The text asserts that materials and souls are fundamentally locked into their inherent nature. Peonies will always be peonies. Cattle will be cattle, without an external intervention. And by that, the text means direct infiltration or guidance from higher consciousnesses like gods, celestials, or Buddhas will always remain basically human. If you surround yourself only with like-minded, ordinary people, your inherent nature just cannot change. You need an outside force to break the gravity. Section 4. Death and genetic imprints. So, the crucial point is, what actually happens at the exact moment a life leaves the physical world? The direction of your next life is entirely dictated by what's called your non-material structure, which is essentially your consciousness at the exact moment of death. If you die with the consciousness of an animal, you reincarnate into the animal world. If you attain the consciousness of a celestial, you go to a higher realm. And the text is super clear about this. You cannot fake it at the last minute. If you maintain a lower, human consciousness your entire life, you can't just suddenly attain Buddha's consciousness on your deathbed. There are absolutely no sudden qualitative leaps without a lifetime of quantitative accumulation.
The framework takes this a step further, treating past lives as literal genetic imprints on your current DNA and behavior. It's like how a geologist can look at a mountain range and infer millions of years of tectonic history, or how Sherlock Holmes can look at a crime scene and instantly deduce a suspect's habits. An observer can look at your current life, your injuries, your habits, the words you use, and actually trace the imprints of your past lives. Some people carry the heavy imprints of animals, others of humans. To ascend in this framework, you have to actively work to eliminate all of those lingering earthly imprints.
Section 5. The mercy of forgetting.
For a system this complex to function without collapsing under its own weight, there has to be some sort of maintenance mechanism. Let's move on and see how this builds our understanding of the universe's dynamic balance. This brings us to Mangpo soup, which is a memory-wiping mechanism from Chinese mythology that gets referenced in the text. Before a life reincarnates upward, its memories of previous existences are completely erased. Now, I know it's easy to view a memory wipe as a loss or some kind of punishment, but the author explicitly frames this as an act of profound cosmic compassion. To really understand why this memory wipe is a mercy, just imagine the sheer, unthinkable mental chaos if you retained all your memories across thousands of reincarnations. What if you suddenly realized your current child was actually your mortal enemy in a past life, or that your spouse used to be your grandmother? What if you realized your beloved pet used to be your child? It's a completely jarring thought, isn't it? Society would instantly collapse under the weight of that kind of psychological confusion. Therefore, the text argues, the lower a life form is, the more heavily and thoroughly its memory must be wiped to protect the stability of the mortal world. The author concludes that these cosmic realities are heavily guarded secrets, deliberately kept coded in parables and myths. The vast majority of people live in confusion, because if the raw, literal truth of reincarnation and the cosmic cycle were broadly revealed, the masses simply wouldn't be able to handle it. It would inevitably lead to conflict and widespread disaster. So the system actively protects itself from the chaos of human reaction. Which brings us to the ultimate implication of this entire framework. If your non-material structure, meaning your current, everyday consciousness, is what dictates your ultimate destination the moment you leave this world, where are you headed? It's a really fascinating thought experiment derived directly from the logic of the text. Are you following the mass gravity of the pyramid, or are you accumulating the qualitative changes needed to finally break free? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this structured look at a cosmic rulebook has given you something profoundly interesting to think about today.